Welcome to the Polar Steam Cool Connections live stream. While we're waiting for folks to join, please post in the chat where you are watching from and if others are joining you. We'd love to know how many people are watching from your location. Again, welcome to the Polar Steam Cool Connections live stream. If you are just joining us, folks are posting in the chat where they're watching from, and if others are joining them, like a classroom, we're always excited to have classrooms join. The folks are sharing how many people are watching with them if they are joined with others. Ooh, we've got some people from New York City. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Reno and Tampa, Florida. Nice. I bet Florida's a little warmer than Antarctica right now. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started with our cool connections today, featuring drifters beneath Antarctic waves. I'm Jamie Ivory, the logistics coordinator for Polar Steam program, and we are excited to have you with us today. Polar STEAM is a US NSF funded program based at Oregon State University that facilitates virtual and field-based collaborations between polar researchers and educators. And we also include artists, and all of these fellows are there to enhance science communication, bringing polar science to everyone. A recording of this live stream will be posted on our YouTube channel. For today, we will focus on today's events, on this team's stories and experiences from studying the drifters beneath Antarctic's waves. However, I do want to take a moment to mention that our 2026 virtual Antarctic Field Educator and Researcher Fellows are now posted on our website. The 2026-27 Antarctic Artists and Writers Fellowship process is progressing for the upcoming season, and we look forward to sharing updates once placements are confirmed. We are currently recruiting NSF-funded polar researchers for 2027 collaborations. If you have questions about our artist, educator, or researcher programs, please refer to the information on our website. The FAQ section will answer most questions, and we will update the Apply Now page when we have new information. Today, we are excited to connect with three of our Polar STEAM fellows, Dr. Debbie Steinberg, Andi Twiss, and Gabriel Dawe, off the coast of the Western Antarctic Peninsula. We will start with a presentation from the fellows, and we will follow that with a question and answer session. I know we had a question from a sixth grader, Caleb, who asked, where have they been? So I did want to draw everybody's attention to the map on the left. All those white dots are places that they have or will stop the ship to sample at during the cruise. We invite you all to submit questions in the live chat, and our team will monitor and ask those questions and questions submitted ahead of time through the Google form after the fellows share about their work and experiences. Now, I'd like to introduce our fellows. Andi Twiss is an Earth and space science teacher from New Millennium Academy. She's passionate about connecting young scientists to the world around them, eager to provide interdisciplinary, hands-on, project-based learning. She prides herself on bringing cultural connections to the classroom and fostering a global mindset in her scholars. Dr. Debbie Steinberg is a biological oceanographer and zooplankton ecologist. Her research program focuses on how drifting animals, called zooplankton, influence cycling of nutrients and organic matter, and how climate affects long-term change in zooplankton communities in different marine environments. In Antarctica, she is co-lead of the Palmer Long-Term Ecological Research Program. You might hear it referred to as Palmer LTER, which investigates the long-term effects of environmental change on the pelagic food web west of Antarctic Peninsula. And Gabriel Dawe is a multidisciplinary artist exploring the intersects of color, light, and space through large-scale site-specific installations. Best known for his Plexus series, he uses vibrant threads to create immersive environments that instill a sense of wonder in the viewers. His work draws inspiration from architecture, textiles, and natural phenomena, reflecting on themes of identity, environment, and impermanence. Through his practice, Gabriel invites viewers to engage with the ethereal beauty while contemplating broader questions of human connection and environmental change. Gabriel, Debbie, Andi, welcome. Now I'll turn it over to all of you to tell us about your experiences from the Southern Ocean.
Great. Well, hello everybody from Antarctica. I'm Debbie Steinberg. And as Jamie said, I'm a professor of marine science and I'm from the Virginia Institute of Marine Science in Southeast Virginia. And I've been part of this long-term program now since about 2008, where we have an annual research cruise along the Western Antarctic Peninsula to study the effects of climate warming on the whole ecosystem. And what you see here is that little red dot on the left is where we are in the Antarctic Peninsula. And next to that shows our cruise track, which Jamie just showed a bit of. And this is what we're doing during the cruise. And we have made our way from the north, up the north there, all the way down. We call it mowing the lawn down the peninsula, hitting these different stations on our research vessel, which is the Roger Revelle. And the home of Roger Revelle is at Scripps Institute of Oceanography. And we are a large science party. I put up this is a poster we actually have hanging in our hallway here of our science party. And we have, over 20 scientists studying everything from the physical oceanography, so the water movements, and the phytoplankton, which are the tiny drifting animals, plants, to the zooplankton, which are the drifting animals. We also have seabird ecologists and folks studying the cycling of nutrients, the biogeochemists, we call them. We have our shipboard marine technicians, and of course, our polar steam fellows. So we have a very, what we call multidisciplinary group aboard the ship. And we have been out here already for more than a month. And right now we are all the way at the bottom of this map. So we have covered almost all of those stations. So we're feeling pretty good right now that we've gotten a lot of the work that we were planning to do done. And so we've started at Palmer Station, which is one of the U.S. Antarctic research stations in the north. And we worked our way down. We made a stop at the British Antarctic Research Station, Rothera, and we've really had a very exciting time. And so if I can have the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about what this study is about. So this project, the Palmer LTER, started in the early 1990s. So for more than 30 years now, we've been studying the effect of climate warming and also sea ice loss on the pelagic ecosystem west of the Antarctic Peninsula. And so by pelagic ecosystem, I'm talking about all of the plants and animals that are living in the water column, not on the bottom, but floating freely in the water column or swimming in the water column. And we are looking at everything from the tiny microbes and bacteria, the phytoplankton, the little drifting plants, on up to the zooplankton, such as krill, and I'll tell you more about them in a moment, to the things that eat the krill, like the penguins and the seals and the humpback whales. On the right there, you see what we call our signature long-term data sets. And at the top, we're starting with some different, what we call climate oscillations, or the changes in the atmosphere that affect the ocean. And that in turn affects the temperature of the water and the amount of sea ice, which is really important to the organisms that live here, which many are dependent upon the sea ice. We also are looking at things like storminess, which mixes the water, which is very important to the plants and animals that live in the water. And then phytoplankton. And as we move down, you can see our long-term data sets for krill and whales. And then 3 different kinds of penguins: Adelie penguins, chinstrap penguins, and gentoo penguins. And so what we're interested in is to see how the long-term changes in climate and also changes in between years in sea ice affect the organisms that live here. And we're finding some pretty interesting things, like in the northern part of our study area, there's been a long-term decrease in Adelie penguins, but there's been an increase in other species like chinstrap and gentoo penguins. We're also seeing krill, which are very dependent. You need the sea ice for a number of different reasons, including their young feed underneath it. And we're seeing a contraction of their range southward. And I'll show you, we just caught some krill just last night that we saved to show you all. I'm going to see. There we go. So these are some of the Antarctic krill that are very important food for penguins, seals, and whales. You can see them swimming around there. Their little black eyes. They look kind of like shrimp. They're very much like shrimp, actually. And they form big swarms that are very what the baleen whales and penguins and other things feed on. So back in the next slide, just to be more specific about what our team is doing is studying the zooplankton, like these krill. And we do that because they're a very central component of the food web, and they feed on the microscopic plants, and then the larger predators like the penguins and seals feed on the zooplankton. And they're also important in carbon and nutrient cycles in the ocean. So those, what you see on the, you see us doing a zooplankton there, tow there with a net on the deck. And those are 3 different important kinds of zooplankton that we find here in the Western Antarctic Peninsula: the krill, pteropods, which are little open ocean snails, and salps, which are a kind of gelatinous or zooplankton or jelly plankton. And those are the fecal pellets or poop from krill. And they're very important in carbon cycling in the ocean here. And it helps sort of feed the deep ocean. The krill eat the phytoplankton in the surface, and they poop, and their poop sink, and that feeds things that live deeper in the water. So these are just a few of the things we're interested in and we're studying. And I'm going to let Andi tell you more.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. My name is Andi Twiss. I am a 6th grade Earth and Space Science teacher. I have been teaching middle school science for the last 7 years. I'm from Minnesota, and so climate is a little bit different, but I learned that it is actually colder at home. It is very cold in Minnesota and has been for most of January. I think we got down to -22 Fahrenheit. It's not been that cold here. So luckily we've been able to still do our deck operations and all of our net tows. So I'll kind of talk through what that process looks like, but I wanted to show a couple of like in situ photos here of a kelp chain. So what Debbie was just talking about, this is a chain of kelps that I was able to capture from a Zodiac boat ride that I also took this picture of to see the Revelle, kind of scale it to where we are in the environment. It feels like a big ship when you're on it until you're off of it. Jamie, if you could click the next slide. Wonderful. So I included this photo of the Revelle. I took this from the top of Rother Point when we were hiking around on the British station, just to show that back deck. That's where most of our operations take place. That's the A-frame there, where we deploy a 2-meter and 1-meter net that have different like mesh strain in order to capture different types of zooplankton critters. This other picture here is called the mock nest. It's a different type of net we deploy over the side. This is how we do comparisons between like day critters and night critters to see what we can catch. Next slide, please. So here is it in action. You can see there's a lot of hands on deck, quite literally. And once we pull it up, we rinse off the net, which you'll see another picture of in a minute. And then we take what's called the cod end and we put it into a larger bucket or halibut tub to start sorting and identifying and essentially taking a census of all the critters. While this is happening, you have other people setting up the next net and deploying that. And it's a pretty speedy operation at this point in the season. So once again, here is a picture of that A-frame fully out towards the ocean. It will lift up these nets, drop it into the water, going down to 120 meters for the larger net and to 300 meters, provided that the depth is there for us for the smaller one. And here is a picture of Debbie holding one of those gelatinous salps, which are beautiful creatures that do sometimes clog up the net quite a bit, but we've been able to sort through them and actually measure them in the lab here. Next slide, please. So some of these on-deck operations, you can see the net coming back up. It's depending how windy it is, it kind of serves as a giant windsock. It can be pretty hard to rein in at times. Other times it's been beautifully smooth, no swells. So you hoist it in with these tag lines here. And then, like I said, you'll hold up the net to rinse it off with a saltwater hose to catch all the critters in that bottom end. We bring our catch back into the lab where we are right now on this call. You can see there's trays and buckets and sprayers and graduated cylinders and all sorts of things. When we separate out the different species, we get to measure and biovolume them to see kind of the abundance of all the species that are down here. Here is Gabe using some very finely tuned calipers to measure the length of krill. And I am taking it all down on a data sheet. We measure up to 100 krill of our subsample. And then you can see in the middle picture, that's them. They're swimming around in the white tray. And then there is a large bucket of salts behind them. Once we have things kind of fine-tuned or separated out, we get to take a closer look at the species underneath the scope. So this is a microscope picture of a jellyfish that we were able to capture, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. It was a super fun find to include, and it's not as common as the other stuff, but it was super cool to be able to include it in that sample. I also wanted to talk about some of the other collaborative science that's taking place on the ship. Like Debbie said, there's a lot of different people working together to make this cruise happen. So we've been able to participate, Gabe and I, in more than just zooplankton ecology. We've been able to witness or interview or record or participate in lots of science happening on board. So this is a crew that got to go out on Avian Island with the birders and help them set up camp where they stayed for 5 days, collecting tons of seabird population data. And here it is. We're taking down the camp here with with our 2 birders who are definitely ready to come home and not smell like penguins for a few days. And you can see the penguins in the background who are pretty unperturbed by the humans visiting their island. So they're very curious, but luckily kept a good distance. Some of the other science that we've gotten to help with is some moorings that we both retrieved and then redeployed. And so these were moorings that had been collecting data for 2 years in the ocean. And so it was a fun competition among crew to try to spot it in the ocean when it popped up and then bring it ashore. and then once again, redeploy it in a new location. We also got to participate in some acoustic resonance, which we used to, you can see on the far picture here, to track krill, I'm going to say swells. Is that the right word, Debbie?
Swarms.
Swarms,
Yeah.
krill swarms that are like right underneath the ship. And so we got to kind of chase them and find them in different locations. We were not able to successfully catch them in our net, but it's just a new, really distinct way to track their population using sound waves.
Okay, that's me. So I'm Gabriel Dawe. I'm, like Jamie said at the beginning, I'm a visual artist. I do large-scale site-specific installations, which are part of this long-term series called the Plexus series, and this is one example of them. They're made entirely out of sewing thread, and they are not trying to emulate nature per se. Like, I'm not trying to recreate a real rainbow, but I'm taking inspiration from nature and what light does, the physics of light, how it breaks up in components, and create these constructions that are based in geometry that interact with space. Kind of the next one. These are some other examples of that type of work. And if we could go to the next one. So when I came here, when I was preparing, I was like, okay, like I was kind of thinking, what can I do? And I was thinking of my early steps as an artist. I was working with embroidery. It's a long story, but I started doing embroidery because I wasn't allowed to as a boy. So I decided as a grown man, I could choose what to do. So this is a little bit of going back to the beginnings of my career. They found these squad lobsters in the filter for the ship, for the water of the ship. And so this was my first attempt, like, okay, what can I do in this trip? I know we're gonna be encountering a lot of critters, so this is the first sort of like test, like, okay, I can play with this. Go to the next. We've also started encountering icebergs, which are incredible. We can't get too close to it because we're not on an icebreaker, but there's still like these fascinating structures that are impressive. And so I started playing with that as well. If you can go to the next. This is a little embroidery of a glacier, I'm sorry, an iceberg floating in water. I brought this fabric thinking like, oh, I have a lot of this fabric in the studio. It's very light, so it's easy to travel with. And I think it's working really well. It's doing a very interesting effect. Go to the next. And this is when I started to play with what critters we started to find. This is a copepod, which are very tiny creatures, alien-like in a sense. So this is the first proper critter I made based on what we're encountering on the toes. Next. This is the main star of the show, the krill. One of the things that fascinates me about not only krill, but a lot of the ocean creatures that we're finding is the transparency, like, which works really well with the transparent fabric that I found. So if we can go to the next one. One of my favorite ones, this is Tomopteros worm. My names are still iffy, but which is a beautiful movement worm. can go to the next. This is my rendition of juvenile glass squid. Again, the transparency is just incredible. Next. And this is, I've also been doing some watercolors. This is my rendition of the tray of krill. Next. And then another iceberg, like the landscape and what we encounter is just phenomenal. So it's just been fun to be playing with these watercolors. Next. And the sunsets, we've had some beautiful sunsets. So it's, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. That was so helpful, all of you. Debbie, you did such a great job of talking about the science, and Andi really walking us through the step by step. And then Gabe, your art is so awesome. Having been a zooplankton ecologist, I see you matching the colors and even how the different ways that they lay in the water with the krill, the 3 krill. That was really, really cool. So thank you all so much for those presentations and the pictures. We wanted to jump over to asking questions now. So if folks have questions, you can pop them into the chat and we will ask them out as we have time. I know that we won't have time to get to everyone, but we'll try to get to as many as we can. So one question came in. This is for anyone. This came in from George, a 6th grader, wondering, how do you sleep on the boat? Is it easy to sleep on the boat? And someone named Ian had wondered if anybody woke up on the floor.
I personally love it. Like, it rocks you to sleep. It's amazing. And we have guardrails so we don't fall.
Yep, you sleep in bunk beds typically. They both have guardrails, and it's like a nice soothing motion to go to sleep too, most of the time.
Yeah, and they're making it sound great. Occasionally. I'm a little older, maybe, so yeah. It's fine. Occasionally, though, we have some rough weather, and you're rolling around, and it's kind of this state of half sleep. And you wake up sort of tired. Yes, but it is pretty comfortable most of the time.
Nice. Okay, there's a lot of questions about penguins. Have you seen all 3 species of penguins? Did any of the researchers get to touch the penguins? And Jay specifically wants to know, what were the penguins like? So you touched on this a little bit, Andi, but maybe you can give us a little more detail about what penguins were like.
Absolutely, yeah. I have seen all 3 species, the chinstrap, the adelie, and the gentoo. The gentoo I saw mostly swimming through the water when we were closer to Palmer Station. The adelie I saw on Avian Island, and just a couple of lone chinstrap were hanging out there, maybe a little bit lost, but they're what they're like. They're pretty curious when you're walking into their habitat. They're kind of coming to check you out, and they're pretty goofy. But they are also in their own routine. So once they get used to you, they'll ignore you. Our birders have been able to touch the penguins. They do a lot of studies, not just with penguins, but with some of like the flying migratory seabird or flying birds, not seabirds. And so they catch some of the birds. They will weigh the birds. They'll do kind of measurements of like their beak length and how tall they are. They actually did that today on Charcot Island, which was a pretty big feat because I believe it's the first time scientists were able to make it there in the last 9 years. Is that right? So that's a pretty big deal to check on a very, very isolated population. And so they were able to scoop them up, measure them, and put them back. So
Nice. And on the idea of the large animals that folks are familiar with before we focus some questions on the zooplankton, what other animals have you all seen? Have you seen whales, other birds? Question about polar bears. Did you see any polar bears?
So we've seen a lot of humpback whales, which are baleen whales. So they feed by take gulping big mouthfuls of water. They have baleen that hangs down from the roof of their mouth, and then they strain the water and the krill out by pushing the water through the baleen with their tongue and then swallowing all the krill. And sometimes they do something called bubble net feeding, which is when they work in pairs or even three and swim up blowing bubbles, corralling the krill, and then they come up through this bubble net and eat all the krill that they've just concentrated in their bubble net. So they're using bubbles like we use a plankton net. So we've seen some bubble net feeding. We've also seen seals that eat krill. Saw a leopard seal eating a penguin. So there's, yeah, so it's a wild kingdom out here.
No polar bears though. They haven't seen any of them. They live in the northern hemisphere.
Yeah, no polar bears down here in Antarctica, just in the Arctic.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah.
Okay, thinking about the predator-prey interactions, because we did have some questions about that, and you mentioned seeing that with some of the top food web players, the whale, the leopard seal. What about within zooplankton? Are you seeing any predator-prey interactions when you're capturing the zooplankton?
Yeah, so we have some predators in the zooplankton. One are some of the jellyfish that have stinging tentacles and to capture their prey. So Andi showed a picture of one of those small jellyfish that we found. We've seen some bigger ones too. There are also these what we call arrow worms that have these hooks on their heads that they have chemicals on them that stun their prey. And so they're voracious predators in the plankton. And one of my favorites are called amphipods. They look a little bit like krill, and they have big claws, and they can capture copepods and some other zooplankton prey with their claws to eat them. So in addition to zooplankton eating the microscopic plants, the phytoplankton, we also have carnivorous zooplankton like the ones I just described. So
Wow, that's cool. Like chemicals in the like the little teeth and then big claws. Are they in any way harmful to you as you're working with them?
you guys gotten hurt
No.
by any
Thank
plankton yet?
goodness. It's been a close call, but luckily we're a bit bigger.
Yeah. But some of them are really terrifying when you see them in the
Yes.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. And then you remember, oh, they're just in a petri dish.
Nice. Let's see. We have a couple of questions moving away from animals. Plants, you talked about the microscopic plants in the water, phytoplankton. What about on land? Is there plants on land in Antarctica? Are there trees?
Not that the only terrestrial plant life I've seen, I think I've seen like a small smattering of maybe lichen or moss. I have to talk to the biologist about it, but I've seen some of that on Rothera, but no, I have not seen any other life forms like that.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of what Andi described. No trees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, sorry, jumping back to some of the zooplankton stuff, we did have something come in to the chat from Matan Regional High School. That classroom was wondering, do these krill have a specific range of tolerance?
Yeah, so the the reason, these krill are down here, this really big species, the Antarctic krill, is because they do like cold water. So 4 degrees Celsius is sort of their maximum, the warmest temperature that they do okay at. And the water temperatures down here are colder than that. And that's one reason why we're concerned about sea ice loss and warming, is because these krill won't do well if the water gets much warmer than that. So yeah, they're very intolerant of warmer waters.
Mm-hmm. And Gabriel, what have you found their tolerance is for being still so that you can embroider?
You know, well, it's particularly tricky with the smaller ones when you're trying to get a photo on a microscope. Sometimes it's like, oh, it moved, and yeah. So I got a lot of shots that are just not good.
A lot of blurry action
A lot
shots.
of blurry action shots, exactly.
Yeah. And then Andy and Gabe,
Oh, sorry, it's not only because of them moving, but sometimes it's like the swell. It's sort of like everything is swishing around, and sometimes when we're actually trying to pick up things to count them and separate them, it's like, oh my God, like you're about to grab on it, moves away because the shapes moved, and yeah. So yeah, it's a struggle.
Yeah. And
It's
then
fun though.
you talked about the process, Andy, of like measuring them. How do they tolerate that? Do they sit
They
nice?
don't. The krill especially, what you lay them out on this white space, so you see them nice and clearly, and they flail a bit and they wriggle around, and sometimes it takes 2 people to collaborate and coordinate and get it done. And then eventually with those measurements, they will go into a sample jar where they are preserved and brought all the way back to BIMS. I actually have one here. We'll see. This is more than, there's a lot of glare. This is more than just krill. This is everything in the catch. We have all sorts of critters that get preserved and shipped back home.
Nice. It looked like there might have been some fish in there. Do you guys catch fish as well?
No, it's Atomopterus, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, the fish are usually preserved separately because they have a different chemical that we preserve them with. Tilt it forward. There we go. So I have a hard time seeing with the glare, but yes, I know there's Tomopterus in this one. I've got lots and lots and lots of copepods. I can see some Thysanessa. That worm that you were talking about, or that we were talking about, is right across here. So we're getting more and more familiar with the critters down here.
Yeah, the worm Andy was talking about was the Ketognath. You could see the bulbous head. Oh, wow.
That's a jar krill.
Jarfol superba.
Cool. Let's see here. Okay, some questions for Gabriel. You mentioned the movement of the ship and having some trouble getting pictures of the organisms. What's it been like painting on a moving ship?
Um, Not any different, I guess, than it's not. I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't noticed any difference. Oh well, the cool thing is that when they collect deep water from with the CTD, they collect water from 3,000 meters below, and I get to collect some of that water that their scientists are not using and paint with that. So that's kind of pretty cool. And in a way, whenever I also paint with just the water from the ship, that water is water that has been distilled with the heat of the engine. So in a sense, I'm also, if I'm using just the regular water, I'm painting with seawater that has been distilled. So I think that's pretty cool.
That is really neat. Awesome. Here's a question from the chat. Debbie and Andy, this viewer could just feel your joy when Gabriel shared his artwork. Can either of you speak to what that experience has been like having an artist working with you on the ship?
Very privileged. Our lab is gorgeous because his watercolor and his embroidery is hung up everywhere. And so that's in the main lab down the hall, and we're very, very lucky.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I think I got interested in plankton when I was in sixth grade, actually, when we got some water from a stream near my elementary school, and I got to look at it under the microscope for the first time. And ever since then, I've loved small creatures. And the reason that really at the core of what I enjoy about what I do is I love the critters, and so they're beautiful. And I've been doing this for 35 years now, and there's always something new in the tow, some other beautiful animal. And so I love to see that Gabe has chosen, doing the embroidery of some of these creatures that I've always just thought were beautiful. So yeah, it's been great.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. There's a couple of questions that have come in about the ship. So do you know, I guess you haven't seen much sea ice, so can't really mention if it's been challenging to steer the ship through ice, but like, do you get a sense of if it's hard to maneuver a large ship like this during sampling processes? And then Ian specifically asked, how does the ship move when everybody's asleep? Is there a time when everybody's asleep?
Yeah, that's a great question. We work on shifts. So we work 24 hours a day. And so there's sort of a day crew and a night crew, and that's true of the scientists, but it's also true of the crew on board the ship, which we really haven't talked about yet. We have officers on bridge that steer the ship, and we have crew that are in charge of running the machinery and cooking and just making the ship run for us so that we can do our science. And so we wouldn't be able to do this without their support. And so there's always somebody up on the bridge who's awake steering the ship, and there's usually always scientists awake in the lab on deck doing something too. So there's somebody around 24/7.
Yeah, we have an incredible crew that works so hard to keep the ship safe, to keep the scientists doing science, and to keep those two visions aligned. We also have two ice pilots that help the captains navigate around the ice or through ice. As you mentioned, we have very, very low sea ice, so their job has been a little bit easier than it may have been on other seasons.
Mm-hmm. I see. We are starting to run short on time since there are a few classrooms watching. Wanted to give just a little bit of time to answer the question, how did your life experiences lead you to where you are now? So if we could start with Debbie, you mentioned a little bit about having the spark of the interest in middle school. Can you talk?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And after that, I think it was just, I'm just going to the beach with my family, and I'm a swimmer. I've always loved being in the ocean and on the ocean, and learned to scuba dive, and just sort of followed that through and studied it and in college and graduate school. And yeah, it's just something I've wanted to do for a long time, and just getting experience going on research cruises to see that I liked oceanography, and yeah, been doing it a long time now. It's been great.
What about you, Gabriel?
Wait, what was the question? How I got here to the like at this point. Um,
What was your journey that led you
pandemic.
here?
Well, I went to the Arctic a few years ago and I encountered ice for the first time, and it kind of changed my life in a way. Like as you can see, like my work is very colorful, and being in an environment that is almost devoid of color, like kind of like really made me, I don't know, changed my perspective. And so I started getting interested in the polar regions and how fragile these environments are, and how the ice is sort of like melting away, which is not a good thing. So that's what led me to really try to explore more of these areas to be able to make artwork that um, hopefully inspires people to become better stewards of our world. That's, yeah,
Thank
take
you.
better care of our planet.
Yeah. And Andi, what's your
Yeah.
journey?
I had met some teacher friends a few years ago that had done the earlier version of Polar Steam called Polar Trek. And so when I saw Polar Steam launched, I put in an application right away to be an educator fellow. So if you're an educator watching, do it, apply for it, try it out. And I also had my students involved in this long-term ecological research data analysis through Rutgers University teleconference program. So my scholars have been able to Zoom with researchers on Palmer Station for 2 years prior. And that's an incredible outreach program that every classroom should take advantage of, because they have incredible work and they bring the real data to our young scientists.
And then we unfortunately have just time for one more question, and I wanted to bring to light a question that came from the chat, which I imagine a lot of people are wondering after seeing your work. Gabriel, where do you envision your work living in public spaces in the future that might be inspired from this experience?
Yeah, hopefully in some museum near you. I know I'm going to be part of a show at Oregon State where Polar Steam is homed, I guess, in September. So there's going to be something, some of these embroideries are probably going to end up there. And hopefully in some museum show or gallery around the country or
Great.
world.
Is there a place that someone can easily find that information in the future? Like, is following you on social media like a best way to?
Yeah, Instagram, it's where I post most things. So, or my website.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay. Unfortunately, we have run short on time. We got so many great questions, and I'm really sorry that we didn't have time to ask them all. But thank you, Andi, Gabriel, and Debbie, for taking the time to answer questions and share your experiences and your pictures. And I also want to ask you to please extend our thanks to the research vessel Roger Revelle. I don't know who's been working magic with the technology to make a live stream like this possible from the bottom of the world, but we really appreciate it.
Pass that on.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys, and I hope that the remainder of your field work is a grand success and that you have a nice, safe journey home.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
See you soon, rhinos.
Bye.
All right. To all our viewers, thank you for joining us and asking such insightful questions. There are always many ways to engage with Polar Steam. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and follow us on social media at Polar Steam Team. To see our blogs, educational resources, and program information, check out our website. A reminder that a recording of this live stream will be posted on our YouTube channel. Thank you for tuning in to Polar Steam's Cool Connections today, and we hope to see you at our